Today I want to talk about power scaling in Yu-Gi-Oh! Now, this is not to be confused with power creep in Yu-Gi-Oh! But we are going to touch on that first before we get into anything else. When we think of power creep, generally we are thinking of the fact that decks nowadays can do a lot more with a lot less, right? This is a monster from 2003 if you're in English territories. It's called Skilled Dark Magician. Skilled Dark Magician is a monster that requires you to activate 3 spell cards, and then after 3 spell cards are activated, you contribute the monster to special summon a Dark Magician from your hand, deck, or graveyard. Now, it is cool that you can get it from anywhere, basically. The problem with this card is that it is a lot of commitment to get out a normal monster that doesn't do anything. At the time when this was printed, that's a lot of attack points. It's cool pressure, very easily interruptible, very easy to not get the effect off, and over time there have been so many new ways to get access to monsters very easily that this is kind of not a thing anymore. Nowadays, Dark Magician decks generally are going to be playing Eternal Soul, which every single turn can special summon Dark Magician from your hand or your graveyard. Obviously it has a huge downside to it, but this is just getting you the basic idea. It is a trap card. You have to set it first. You can't do it turn one. Like, there are pros and cons, yes, but just roll with the main idea here that Eternal Soul is able to summon Dark Magician back repeatedly. So when I say power scaling, what I'm referring to is if we're measuring card power, Skilled Dark Magician relative to other cards in the Dark Magician archetype is relatively low power. Yes, it has a good attack stat, but its effect is basically something that requires you to go through a lot of hoops for a little payoff. Comparing that to the absolute behemoth power of recent Dark Magician support, Dark Magician of Destruction just requires you to banish a level 6 or higher Dark Spellcaster monster during the turn a spell card or effect was activated. And it can search basically any Dark Magician card in the whole archetype on summon. Now, it's not like there's no restrictions here. It does force you to pick a level 6 or higher Dark Spellcaster monster that you can summon on the field consistently and easily to get the effect. But it is a very simple card to summon in a lot of decks that aren't even just Dark Magician decks. As a result, this is now a de facto way to search for Dark Magician cards in the archetype. Compare this to another card. This card's not even bad. Soul Servant stacks a Dark Magician card from your deck to the top of your deck, and then while it's in your graveyard, you can banish it to draw a card for each Dark Magician Girl, and Palladium Oracle Mahad in your graveyard. So it can draw up to 3, but generally you're drawing 1 or 2, usually 1. And it's just kind of a roundabout search card, right? But you are required to have one of the Dark Magician monsters in your graveyard, which it's an engine requirement. Dark Magician of Destruction doesn't require that much. That's why it's so splashable in non-Dark Magician decks as well. So I'm not calling Soul Servant bad at all. It's a great card. The situation that I'm talking about that arises with this is, does Dark Magician of Destruction rid the need for Soul Servant, right? The more requirements a card has to be used, the less splashable it is, the less likely you are to go to it to fulfill your archetype's win condition, etc., etc. So when we look at cards that search Dark Magician cards, we also have the upcoming releases that have been in Japan since like February, but we don't have yet. Dark Magician the Pharaoh Servant. I'm going to read this verbatim. This card's name becomes Dark Magician while on the field or in the graveyard. Okay, so it potentially can replace Dark Magician outside of the cards that specify a normal monster. You can only use one of the following effects per turn, and only once during that turn. If it's in your hand, you can reveal a spell, special it, then you can set a spell or trap that mentions Dark Magician from your deck. That's crazy, right? This can just summon itself and tutor any of them. Now, mind you, this blocks quick play spells from being activated during the turn you set them, because you're setting them face down, right? You're not adding them to the hand. Dark Magician Destruction adds to your hand, so you can play them that turn. So there is a notable difference there. But the fact that it tutors any of them from your deck simply by revealing it, not even discarding, revealing a spell in your hand, can let you set any Dark Magician card in the archetype. Dark Magical Curtain. Each player can special summon 1 Dark Spellcaster monster from their hand or deck. Then, if you special summon a monster whose original name is Dark Magician or Dark Magician Girl, you can add a spell or trap that mentions Dark Magician from your deck to your hand. This card is a quick play spell that adds any spell or trap that mentions Dark Magician from your deck to your hand. And so we now are in a place where in current year, these 3 cards are significant buffs to the act of searching cards in this archetype. You will never not have what you need at this point. Obviously, this does let your opponent special summon a dark spellcaster from their hand or deck as well, but because it can't activate its effect, I don't know how relevant that is. It could come up in mirror matches. People could tech certain things to take advantage of the fact that this is being played, but either way, I'm not even saying these are badly designed cards. Not even about bad design. The point I'm getting at is, when this is the case, what does this mean for playing Yu-Gi-Oh? In the modern game, this means that you are going to pick the best of the best. But there are a lot of other ways to play Yu-Gi-Oh! If you're playing limited formats, whether it's cubes, your own custom, whatever, you're playing with your friends and you're trying to create an environment that gives you the Yu-Gi-Oh! Experience that you're looking for, you have a lot to consider. A lot of people choose Time Wizard because it locks you into a certain time in the game's history so that you can just focus on that card pool. Konami already designed it for you. You already know what cards were ban worthy because there was literally a ban list. So you can just play in that playground. But if you want to experiment with cards from different eras, you kind of have to evaluate how powerful different cards are with each other that weren't designed at the same time or around each other. As a result, when you're looking at an archetype, it's really easy to just look at these super powerful cards that can search anything from the archetype and think, oh, well, I'm going to play these. But in what situation would you want to instead pick Skill Dark Magician into the card pool as the option for the thing you're building? I think the answer generally is, are you able to create an environment where it is satisfying or nail-biting or interesting to see the spell counters build up, and that there are cards that reward you for summoning the Dark Magician and give you a payoff for doing it, like the whole environment's built around that. If you can create an environment for your cards that makes this process engaging, satisfying, and interesting, then it should be there. Part of the reason why this works in modern Yu-Gi-Oh!, just having these really, really powerful search cards that also do other things, is that the back and forth between players is so powerful that you need your cards to be live. You need everything to do something and contribute to the back and forth that players are having, etc., etc. But when you're looking at older cards that were more focused on, you know, having this build up and then a payoff, even if the payoff's not very strong, it's a different feeling, and they don't mix together. Not normally. You have to be careful on like how you piece these things together. I would describe this as good simplified and bad simplified. Good simplified is having cards that are low resistance, low requirement, but don't just do everything for your win condition. They're good simplified in that they're easy to understand, they're reliable in many situations, but you still have to think and play the game to get the outcome you're looking for. Bad simplified is when, why do you need to think about combos or playing through different situations when you can just rely on a single card or series of cards to just kind of do everything for you? You don't have to think very much. And I think that people's frustration with certain decks and certain cards can sometimes conflate these things. Just because a deck is powerful or it outmaneuvers the way your deck is built, it doesn't mean it's bad simplified. It can just mean that it's poorly constructed as a matchup. And that's a design problem in a game that has, you know, tens of thousands of cards to be constantly considering against each other. And it's why they really just focus on the new stuff all the time, or getting you to buy the new thing instead of making everything flow well together. That's about all my thoughts on it right now. There's a lot of studying I still need to do, both with the history of the game, playing optimally in different settings, but also just how different archetypes work. That's why it's interesting to look at different elements of an archetype and go, okay, so at this stage of the archetype, in this part of its history, this is how its win condition and gameplay was oriented. And then you look at it now and it let go of a lot of that identity or a lot of those hoops to embrace something new. I think a great example of this is the old Sacred Beast cards. They did a couple waves of it, and now there's a new wave of it that just kind of ignores most of the old stuff to try out something completely new. The Dark Magician stuff isn't doing that. The Dark Magician stuff is iterating on itself over and over again. Like Eternal Soul having the destruction effect built into it is exactly why so many Dark Magician fusion monsters have a clause that they can't be destroyed by card effects. They're unaffected by the Eternal Soul destruction effect. When Eternal Soul was printed, their cards didn't say that. right? That was supposed to be a downside for a very powerful card. Over time, they tuned the new cards to better suit where the power of the game is. I'm not really complimenting or insulting Konami on this front, it's just kind of how things turned out. I'll talk more about card design stuff in the future, occasionally in Departure Radio. It'll coincide with a lot of stuff I'm doing on the main channel. I either have coming up or there will be by the time this video uploads, I don't know. My first episode kind of talking about this, and it's more Dark Magician stuff. It's why it was on the brain and why I use it as an example in this video.